Hey there, welcome to episode 21 of the FFS Talk audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. I almost bit my tongue just then. Sorry. Today, the afternoon of Wednesday, April 17, 2024. Today we're going to speak about precision and accuracy and you and me. What do these things mean? Why do they matter? Do we have them? Can we please have more of them? Precision and accuracy, orthogonal, but definitely appealing when encountered together, but so often lacking individually. In a world only moving faster, we have the tools and the devices in our pockets mostly. Why are we apathetic? Why do we not worry about, or why do we not show more concern? Why do we not expect more in these regards? By the way, orthogonal means perpendicular or statistically unrelated. Precision and accuracy can each exist without the other, but they do make a good pair. Links for today's episodes, as always, hopefully in your episode description, wherever you have found this podcast. A phrase that should be more appealing, but boy howdy, speaking of lack of precision, you could find this anywhere, and the episode description could be shown nicely, easily readable, or it could be a mess. It could be displayed as just plain old text, in which case my bullet list is not useful to you. So when we do roll out, it's part of the MyMuni project. I've been talking about this for weeks. MyMuni is an Innovate for Vegas Foundation, open source, public, civic volunteer project. We are a public charity. We're doing it all for free. We will deploy in what we call a labs deployment. If you remember, Gmail was always in beta. I think there used to be a Google Labs. Labs are a way for companies, or in our case, our nonprofit, to deploy things that people can try out that, they may or may not be done. But we'll deploy this so that people can make use of it. And we're actually going to deploy it as an arm's length venture so that volunteers can actually monetize their efforts. So that will be more of a topic on the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, which I also produce every week. So look for that. But being able to find content creators is a part of what we're trying to accomplish. So the MyMuni project, information sharing, making your smart city smarter, however you want to do the marketing, being able to identify, locate, discover, patronize, consume the content created by people in your neighborhoods, in your cities, talking about things that might be important to you. Yes, it's interesting to learn about topics that are interesting, but especially here in the greater Vegas area, a lot of local content creators, or even people visiting, will review things. They'll take a tour. They'll check out the new resort, the new casino, the new gaming thing, the setup for a vehicle race, whatever that might be, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things going on in Las Vegas, the greater Vegas area. There are a lot of sights to see, a lot of nature to see. There's a lot of food to eat, drinks to be drank, and the list goes on. If you rely on an algorithm to find these things, you get what you get. So part of what we're going to try to accomplish is to make it easier to discover, follow, find, etc. Even something as simple as a local podcast, such as this one. So I've been talking about deploying the website and so on. There's just not too many. There's a lot of things to do. But ffstalk.com will see the light of day, I promise. And part of the thing I would really like to address post-haste is being able to display my show notes in a consistent manner that just works. The sampling of ways that are out there is just very frustrating. So all that said, the links, as usual, my shameless self-promotion, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. I do have a list of links to the, as I'm speaking now, 4 audio programs I produce each week, 4 different shows: Quaggling Sand, FFS Talk, that's this one, Cafe Genius Impresarios, and Let's Innovate for Vegas. There will probably be more. Spotify has introduced integration with Riverside.fm. They do non-streaming video program production tools. So you can have guests, virtual guests, and produce video shows. There's a free tier, which is nice. So I'll probably give that a try. Although I would also like to do some live shows, especially the Let's Innovate for Vegas show, Let's Innovate for Vegas, should have virtual hackathons or coding sessions or collaboration sessions at the very least. So see if we get those going and more. So if you look at buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, when the websites, when other projects roll out, they will all be there among other places. But that's a convenient stop. I've had the Buy Me a Coffee profile page for years now. A small number of people have purchased coffees. The small, $5, which is fine. You are under no obligation at all to spend any money. But if you do, all my projects are powered by coffee. FYI. Or spelled differently, KO-FI, coffee.com/DanHugo. Another profile for another platform that is coffee and tip jar like, coffee oriented and tip jar like. I've had that for years. I know how I'm going to make use of it. So if you visit there today as I'm speaking, there's not much useful there, but there will be more as I get these other programs up and running and so on. So it'll be a nice announcement channel. Although we do have the possibility of Activity Pub and integration with that My Media platform. So we'll see. We'll see how all this fits together. Interesting times. If we do not experiment, we do not know. A few other links relevant to today's episode. Accuracy and precision as described on the Wikipedia page, aptly titled Accuracy and Precision. If you are not familiar with the difference, they are orthogonal. You can have one without the other. It's always nice to have both. I believe, on that page they do have a nice diagram of a graph, of a chart, I should say. So precision is how, the dartboard example, which I will describe more later. If you throw two darts and they end up very near each other, then you are precise with your aim. If they don't land on the dartboard, then you are inaccurate. So we'll leave it there for the moment, but we'll cover that more later. Units matter even near Mars. A long time ago, I think it was 2005, you can read the article. It's on the nasa.gov website, so you know it's true. But way back when I was leaving Las Vegas, I was living for the last couple of weeks with my college roommate and his cousin. I won't name any names just to, if you know who I'm talking about, great, but probably not. His cousin was working he was working such that he was involved with this mission, in mission planning or something. So I heard from that grapevine that there was indeed a mismatch of units. It took a while for all of this to become clear and for people to admit things, and it's rather embarrassing, really, when you think about it. If you use different units, it's very hard to be accurate. If I tell you the weight limit for your luggage is 22, and I happen to mention that it's kilograms, then you might say, oh, okay, so 22, that's about 22 pounds. No, it is 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So 22 kilograms, 2.2 pounds per kilogram times 22 kilograms, 220 pounds. That is not true. What do I work for NASA or something? No, 22 kilograms is about 48 pounds. So you multiply by 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So when you are not clear on the units, which was the case here, so if one group or team at NASA was working in metric units, meters, kilograms, Celsius, and if another team was working in imperial units, which are feet, pounds Fahrenheit temperature. So if you don't know that, and if you treat the numbers interchangeably, right? So when I said 220 pounds, so I was like, 22 kilograms times, I should get, so I picked a number. You can very easily start confusing yourself, especially if you switch them, if you transpose the units directly, right? So if you're like, 22 pounds per, 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So if I somehow come up with, it's 2.2 kilograms per pound, that goes south pretty quickly. So it's important. Oh, and by the way, 22, almost 22. If you look at a 45-pound weight at a gym, if you are so inclined, an Olympic 45-pound weight, if you type in, you'll see on there, I think they show them as, is it 21? 20 kilograms? Let me make sure I'm doing this math right. Yeah, it's like 20.5, I think. 20.5? You two can do this. Yeah, it's like just under 20.5 kilograms. So you can see on most weight discs, it'll show the mass, really, of the large plate, and they'll show it as 45 pounds, and then they'll have a metric kilogram number. So it's important to be able to be sure which number you're referring to, which numbers you are using if you're going to start multiplying or adding or things like this. So if you get that incorrect, your entire Martian orbiter might crash, and nobody wants that. Time is money, and that doesn't necessarily need to include laziness. I've included a Wikipedia page for the time is money aphorism, often attributed to Benjamin Franklin, but then they mentioned that it was actually in print prior. It was generally aimed at making the best use of one's own time and not chilling, not doom scrolling on your phone all day. So actually getting up early to rise, what is it? Early to bed, early to rise. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I would think that's also another B. Franklin expression, either himself or a pseudonym. So yeah, time is money. Now, in today's world, that extends to just about everything, and whatever you do, whatever you ask of other people, whatever you are waiting on, etc., probably impacts someone else at some point. So we have the interconnectedness of all things. That's a different expression for another time. So time is money, which is often lost on people. I should tell, since I don't have it in here, I'll tell a very quick story. When I was working at True Vision, and by the way, I think I've told this in another episode of a different show, maybe. I was working at True Vision, our engineering meeting, Thursdays, maybe, whichever day it was, like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., something like that. So once a week, people in engineering would get up from their cubicles. We were all sitting within, if we all stood up in our cubicles, we could all see each other. Oh, hey, how's it going? So we'd all get up and walk into a room, the maximum distance being maybe 100 feet, less, or 25 meters. No, so like it's hard to. It's a very small. It was a very small office. The building was big, but all of engineering fit into a rather compact space. We would all get up, walk into this room, sit down, and do our thing. 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever. I remember one day it was, did everybody see that Netscape went public? And then I would later work at Netscape. But anyway, the meetings would start, on time, 5 minutes late. But we all worked so near each other that, we were in constant communication anyway. So this was a formality, not necessarily critical in our view. So they hired a new engineering manager. The engineering manager, in fact, the person that said that, his name was Chris, about Netscape. He decided to lay off on the high pressure role that he had. So they hired a new engineering manager. His name was Yoram. He was a very strong character. And he attended our first meeting. And he sat there, probably steaming. And 5 minutes. Okay, we're finally ready. And he gets up and says, okay, I'm Yoram. I'm the new manager, etc. Hi, thanks, welcome. He says, let me explain to you why you must be on time. And he laid it out. And the initial reaction was like, geez, who is this guy? He's such a hard ass. When you arrive late, you're wasting the time of everyone in the room and so on. And he's right. He was 100% right. So when you bring your slack, I don't mean the website, I mean your lack of precision. I got there almost on time. I was a couple minutes late. That has a ripple effect. And if people are concerned about these little wastes of time, because you've basically thrown off any schedule for anything that could ripple through the day, right? Because if a meeting has to be an hour, but it starts 5 to 10 minutes late, well, then the next meeting may be delayed, the next meetings may be delayed, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how airlines work. So it was something of an eye-opener, and it was fairly early in my career. So I myself try to get there early, whatever it is. And if you have to be late, I mean, we are humans, things happen, but it should be an absolute priority when you are taking the time of others to value it. So that's a little, I'll step off my pontification box. And I've always liked this video. It's a YouTube video. You can find variations of it if you search for China versus German bearings. Now, they've chosen a bearing mass-produced in China as a comparison. It's not so much a comment on China as much as it is a comment on German precision, which has been a point of national pride for a very long time. So they show in this particular video, you can find similar examples of this, comparing different products from different countries and so on. But this one is fairly simple, fairly straightforward. There's a bearing. It looks like a donut with a small metal balls in it. So it's going to rotate smoothly. You'll find bearings in just about everything, either whether they're ball bearings or in various other forms. So bearings make the world go round, quite literally. And so the Chinese bearing, and again, it's not about being Chinese. It's the German bearing that is the crux of this video. So you place a bearing, same spec, on a pen or a stick of some sort of a rod, and the person, I think it's a man, I think it's a male, fingers. He spins it with his thumb, and it spins and it stops fairly quickly. He puts the German bearing, does the same action to get it spinning, and it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. And that's an indication of the precision that went into the manufacture. So here's the thing, and it's sort of relevant here. Both bearings they fit on that rod. They're the same inner and outer diameters, etc. So they're accurate. They've been produced to the spec required. But the precision of assembly, the absolute, like you could pick any German bearing and it will be as precisely constructed and it will spin forever. And this is a point of pride. So precision in the things we make and the things we do it's exciting. It can be a point of pride, but it also has impact on others around us. And so I think accuracy is important too, but again, you can have one without the other. Why not have both? But if you can be precise or accurate, just pick one to start with. People will notice. They will notice. So my first encounter with the notion of accuracy versus precision, I was in my chemical engineering lecture. Professor Don Reamer, formerly of, I believe, Exxon. He was very much into petroleum refineries and so on. So very familiar with imperial units, British thermal units for the win. But his main focus in life was unit conversions. So he spent a lot of time going back and forth between various, and pick a unit, furlongs per fortnight, whatever units they were. So part of our final exam was a closed book, no notes, unit conversion test. You had to remember exactly. So 2.2 pounds per kilogram, right? That's the one that always pops to mind first. So why? Because he wanted to be absolutely sure that you didn't do something like multiply by 10. He wanted to be absolutely sure that you didn't crash a lunar. You didn't. Well, it's a good thing the lunar lander didn't crash. Make absolutely sure you don't crash a Martian probe into the planet, etc. So unit conversion is important. Why? Because as he described, accuracy versus precision, and he drew the darts, and he said if you throw a lot of darts and they all end up in a cluster, then you have precise aim. If they're all over the place, you are imprecise. If you are aiming at the bullseye or any other part of the board, depending on which game you're playing, and you hit it, you may be accurate. If you only hit it once out of 10, you were sort of accurate. You were not quite accurate because you were imprecise. So if you throw all of your shots, if you throw all of your darts, and they all end up clustered around your intended target, you are accurate and precise. So maybe all of your darts end up around the bullseye or in the bullseye. Twice in my life, I have thrown a dart into the fins of another dart. Yipes. I'm neither accurate nor precise. It was dumb luck. But if you are able to be precise in your aim, or not even precise in your aim, precise in your, you have to, because throwing is multiple muscles and so on. If you're precise in the action of throwing the dart and you're accurate in your aim, then you will hit your targets on a recurring basis. So he went through this and discussed it, and then doing the unit conversions and being consistent about how your results are presented and how they're used by others, it can be critical. If you are inaccurate and imprecise, if you don't include units, and if the next person or the person from whom you get your data to do your calculations or your whatever it is you're doing, and it doesn't have to be petroleum refining. You could be getting ingredients to cook food, or you could be putting fuel in a vehicle. You may estimate your range. This was the Gimli glider. I believe they estimated the fuel based on. Did they use liters versus I can't remember. Pounds versus kilograms. They measure fuel in weight for aircraft or mass. So whatever it was, there was a unit problem or a ranging problem. So if you are like, oh, I need this much fuel to reach a destination, and you've done your math incorrectly, you may end up on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck or somebody to give you a ride to a petrol station of some sort. Unless you have an electric car, then you just might be out of luck, unless you can find a 9-volt battery somewhere. So if you look around your daily travels, you don't need to be sending a probe to Mars, although we'll touch on that briefly. You don't need to be doing anything really super amazing. You'll encounter several examples of accuracy and or precision. Like, it'd be nice if you encountered both. Although we might be not even noticing, or maybe they are not to be found because we are all looking at our phones all the time. So the really expensive example of this, and there are plenty of these, but I picked this one. A real expensive example. So the Mars Climate Orbiter crashed for some time. Around that time, I think, like I said, I think it was around 2005. There were some claims, some denials, different groups, different teams, maybe using metric and some imperial. No, that would be embarrassing. That would be silly. How could we put somebody on the moon 6 times? 12 humans successfully on the moon. And, 11, 12, 13 didn't quite make it. 14, 15, 16, 11, 12. Yeah, 17. Apollo 18 was canceled. So, 6 times. Six visits to the moon. 2 humans landed and then took off again successfully. These, by the way, are, if you look back and you really think about it, that's quite an accomplishment. Spreadsheets were pencil-drawn, slide rules, no calculator. Well, calculators were a different beast entirely. So sitting at your desk, you're using a slide rule, you're writing your numbers on paper, columnar data, yet they were able to pull it off. Amazing. Really, when you think about it, really, really quite amazing. How on earth, how could an agency such as NASA and its various subcontractors and contractors and all involved, how could they drop this ball? But as you can read on the NASA website itself, metric versus imperial, it'll always do you in. This is why shoes have different sizes on them for UK and US and all that, so that you just know, you're never wondering. It's printed right on the tin, right? It is completely possible to be absolutely precise in your calculations. All the calculations from each group may have been dead on accurate, but if you didn't notice that the altitude was given in kilometers, you thought it was miles, or vice versa. If your position was off by kilometers or even meters because you thought they were using feet or miles or feet, etc. Like all these things, if you don't use consistent units and you forget to convert, well, first of all, you should use consistent units in this case. They are part of the accuracy. So if I was completely precise in my calculations, but I was using imperial units, then I was off systematically. I was inaccurate systematically by that conversion factor. And if you didn't take that into account, your calculations would then carry that inaccuracy. So we would be precisely inaccurate and you crash. So if nobody notices, if nobody at some point says, wait a minute, how come you're using miles and I'm using kilometers? What's going on with that? The mission is lost. And if you can read the article, but a lack of common measurement units leads to a loss of calculation accuracy, like I said, and no matter how precise they may have been, it costs real money, right? This was a real, the money I'm going to guess was all in US dollars at some point. That one they probably got right. Always talk to the accountants. They'll get the units right. So not to mention the scientific objectives of the mission were lost, right? You may have a once in a lifetime shot at a comet flying by or landing on or what's the one they altered the course of an asteroid. You know, you've timed all this stuff. You've gotten the trajectories and the orbital bodies and lined up, and you've done your astrophysics, and you get it, and you're so close, and you're like, wait a minute. It missed by 2 miles. And wait, miles? What? We did everything in furlongs. So the bottom line is you can have actual, real losses, and not to mention, if you happen to be working at Boeing right now, you may be wondering, do we use metric? There can sometimes be real life or certainly substantial cost, both, when you are not paying attention, when you are not being accurate and precise. So it's sometimes worthwhile to do both, to put that extra effort in. But what does it mean to me and you? I kind of hope you're not working at Boeing, but I hope if you are, you're using consistent units. I doubt any of us is working on a Mars mission right now, although my stats may be inaccurate. Does any of this impact me, especially on a day-to-day basis? Really? Does it? Have you been on an airplane, like I said, in the last 100 years? Have you driven a car, been on a bus, been on a bridge, or passing under one? Operated an appliance in your home? Used electric power? Used gasoline in a vehicle? Have you crossed the street? Have you been a pedestrian? We are surrounded at all times and on all sides by objects that work, hopefully safely, because of accuracy and precision coming together as closely as needed, as closely as the tolerances specify. And the reason you have tolerances is because, look at that German bearing. The German bearing spinning like that probably exceeds most of the tolerances that people design in. They design for the bearings that are available in mass quantities. But if you have a German bearing, in this case, in this one example, you'll say, oh, we've exceeded the tolerances. And hopefully that doesn't hurt your design, right? So you have to design in the brilliant people that are designing those objects that I mentioned and more that you use day to day have to account for what you could say hopefully the furthest end of a tolerance specification without being outside of it. So they have to account for a bearing that spins for only a little bit and one that is almost frictionless. So if you do that and you do it well, then you end up with devices that operate safely for a long time. and everybody's okay. But if you are not designing these things in, if you design your products, if you design your structures, systems, and you don't account for these tolerances, or if you are lax, if you don't even worry about units, if you just aren't paying attention to a decimal place, or just didn't think about temperature change and how it would impact length of a thing, there's all sorts of the voice of experience, and not necessarily my voice, but the things you learn over mechanical engineering, especially. You learn how systems work, mechanical systems, how they behave under different loads. Someday, if you want to look at dive deep beyond the YouTube conspiracy theories about the World Trade Center towers and how they were designed to take certain loads, but then what ended up happening that just wasn't accounted for, 50, what was it, the 70s. So it was 35 years, 40, say it was 40 years prior when they designed it, 45 years. Right? It was erected in the 70s. So 35 years. Sorry. Yeah. Something like that. Look it up. But they did a really fine job of accounting for a lot of sway. The buildings are moving in the wind. They're tilting back and forth. They're swaying. If an aircraft hit it, they had this accounted for and so on. But if you escape those tolerances, things go awry. And that can happen anywhere at any time. Obviously not quite as spectacularly, but that's something to think about. The flip side, so other people are designing these things. The flip side is, are you being precise and accurate? Have you ever invited someone to a gathering, set an appointment, given directions to a location, and you include and these are simple things, right? You can be more complicated. If you are a chef preparing food, and maybe you're Italian, so this doesn't apply to you, but if you are using imprecise, like it looks right, or a pinch, or there are precise units, but then there are convenience or experience driven or culturally driven measurements, which are much more to taste, perhaps, or the educated eye or smell, nose, or taste buds. But if you are imprecise and you're using terms like it's about 3 miles, or it's near a landmark that you don't know about, or it's something like, if you're using unusual units, like you could tell me how far it is in miles, but I prefer you telling me in seconds. Traveling at unknown velocities in traffic conditions that we are not aware of. So you can be accurate and precise as well. And it's good to get used to those things, because you'll begin to notice when others are not doing the same. So yeah, time is money. Quite possibly you've heard this as a Ben Franklin quote, but it is not. If you read that article allegedly attributed to sometime prior, still a good quote. It's pretty much true. Time value of money, it's an entire economic concept. They were talking about laziness back then, since we were mostly working with sailing ships and horses and the written word being delivered by those. There was no internet, as far as we're aware. You may have written a letter, put some sort of bow around it, or put it in an envelope, brought it to your local post, and they would have perhaps put it on a when trains came along many, many years later, but there wasn't even that. So you'd get a horse. Somebody would carry the mail, perhaps in a buggy, maybe a stagecoach eventually, put it on a ship. It would sail across the ocean. So you could really have some sort of control over your personal time and how you would use your time to make money. If you were running a printing press or farming or whatever it is you were up to, you pretty much had control of your time. And if you had an employees, small business, etc. But you were really not, you couldn't really depend at scale on the schedules and resource availability and so on, not to mention precision. Fun fact, the invention of the modular handgun, the ability, or I think it was rifles first, the ability to construct a firearm with interchangeable parts rather than making them individually meant that you could build and repair firearms, which made for stronger armies and so on, you needed to have a certain level of precision. You needed to have a certain amount of accuracy all through the system, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't fit together. And otherwise, you would have a firearm blow up in the hands of your militia, et cetera, et cetera. So time can be converted to other things as manufacturing and technologies advance. So the notion that time is money as a starting point is valuable, because if you spend the time, if you make the best use of the time, and you make sure you understand the value of the time of others, then that can be a pervasive observation and an implementation detail in other processes. So if precision is pervasive and it becomes a cultural norm, your bearings spin faster. That's the way it is. Do my flights align with your schedule? If you said, be in town sometime on Friday, and I got a flight and I arrived at 3 p.m. on Friday, and the meeting was at 2. Well, you didn't say 2, you just said sometime. So lack of precision can be the beginning of actual cost, delay, frustration. We had a podcaster meetup on Monday this week on the 15th. Happy Tax Day. And the platform they were using to arrange this was a group of people not based in the greater Vegas area. In fact, I believe it was central time. It was a central time zone, not even a mountain time zone. So I don't know why it was off by 1 hour. But the meetup was to start at 7 p.m., but the platform they were using said it started at 8 p.m. because of the time zone difference. So attention to time zone is also important. And then, of course, attention to daylight savings time, which is always a point of confusion. But you must be aware of what the people you're inviting to your event are going to be seeing when they look at the time. If I don't want to drive that into the ground, but being aware, being attentive, being cognizant of what you tell people, how you schedule things, will impact their decisions about how they schedule things, when they plan to arrive, when they plan to have their materials. Oh, I'm making a presentation. I told them to send it out so it arrives sometime on Friday. Is it going to arrive by 2? To return to that one. So clarity and specification of medications, for example, medication dosages, when you should take when and how much, how often, how much of a particular medication. Should I take 1 every 2 hours or 2 every 1 hour? Clothing sizes. I don't think anybody anywhere has ever found clothing items made by different companies, in different places, different parts of the world, that actually match in dimension for a given size number. And even the size numbers seem to have inconsistent units. So clothing, sizes, power requirements of your mobile devices, and whether the chargers and the battery packs can deliver. These are just a few examples that we encounter with a variety of consequences if we're wrong. Your illness and death, in the case of the medication. And I have a favorite House story about that, which I'll mention. Ill-fitting trousers to the dead cell phone. All these things are possible when they go wrong, and we must often reconfigure our schedules to make repairs. So if we survived, then we my phone is dead. Now I got to go find a charging port. The episode of House, and I'm pretty sure it was House. It's something to think about, especially if you ever do anything with language translation, internationalization, and localization, which is another area of precision and accuracy, right? If you have a bad translation, things can go south very quickly. So in this particular episode, an older Hispanic woman comes into the emergency room, dire symptoms. She has her bottle of pills, and it says, take once every 4 hours or once a day or something. So she, as a Spanish-speaking person, took 11 pills. Obviously, this is fictional in this case, but so 11 pills. Why? Because once in English is once, or 11 in Spanish. So without knowing that the label was not translated into her language, she saw a word she recognized, 11, and took 11 pills. So again, fictional in this case, but these things can happen if you're not paying attention. accuracy and precision can matter with dire consequences. And I think it's important to not only consider them for ourselves, but how they impact others. Check that time zone. Make sure you give accurate directions. Make sure you give, well, I'll get to this in a second. Familiar places and relative times. That's where I was heading. So we encounter these at least daily. If you want someone to reach where you are, if you want to have someone find your, join me at a restaurant, meet me at the corner, come to my wedding, the more accurate and precise you are with the time, the place, what to wear, etc. All these questions, you know what the questions are. You can answer them. You can answer them right up front. Any personal engagements, there's going to be schedules, meetings, etc. All of these things will require, unless it's just you, unless you're by yourself, as soon as you invite more than you are having some impact on someone else or some other people. So the more information you can provide them that's accurate and precise, the better it is for them. Then if they're late, if their flight was delayed, these are not the result of lacking imprecise, inaccurate information from you. You can only do so much about airlines. We already talked about that. Their delays propagate through the day. But there are circumstances that are beyond one's control. But if you start out by knowing I need to be precisely there at precisely this time, and I'm quite certain that these pieces of information are accurate, that's a great way to start. My dealings with mobile vendors, food trucks, I've talked about this in other episodes of this and other programs, I'm sure I will again, taught me again that specificity when notifying your customers increases the chances that they will find you. I wrote changes in my notes, so I had to change that to chances. That they will find you, patronize your business, and perhaps tell their friends. If they can't find you, they may give up, and you have to have been frustrated by this at some point. I'm looking for a place. I'm looking for either, it doesn't have to be a mobile vendor. It could be anywhere. And, something as simple as, I forgot to specify east or west. Well, there's an East 10th Street and a West 10th Street. I forgot to specify the floor. I forgot to specify that it's a suite you gave me the address of the business park, not the building. There's always extra detail that if missing has material impact on being able to find the place. It can be quite frustrating. So with food trucks, if you're a food truck fan, or mobile vending in general, but food trucks are probably the most common in the mobile vending space. If someone says, we will be out tomorrow at the historic school, you have to know what that means. Historic school? Oh, of course, the historic Fifth Street School downtown Las Vegas. I know where that is. They'll be there tomorrow. Great. Where did you see it? On Instagram. Oh, well, we were there yesterday. Yeah, but it says tomorrow. Yes, but that was posted 3 days ago or 2 days ago. And Instagram reordered the way they presented it. Oh, so you were there yesterday because you posted it 2 days ago. Did I say 2 days? Now it's the third day. So tomorrow, 2 days ago, is yesterday today. You could have said we'll be there on Wednesday, April 17th at 3 p.m. Food truck, 11 p.m. I'm sorry, 11 a.m. a.m. and p.m., another problem. Fun fact, one of my college suite mates told another of our suite mates who had a vehicle when his flight was arriving. Didn't specify a.m. or p.m. So Larry should have said p.m. Tom assumed 11 a.m. So 11 p.m., Larry calls, hey, where are you? Tom had come back around noon, frustrated that Larry never showed up. So a.m. and p.m., specific locations, etc. These are all important things. So Instagram does a horrible job when you don't provide specific information locations. And by the way, when I first moved to Las Vegas, that historic Fifth Street School was referenced somewhere, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So you had to actually know, historic Fifth Street School, not just the historic school. That one was a little bit easier. Even better was the Learning Village, which was not on any map because it didn't have an official postal address. So we will be at the Learning Village downtown. And I remember that was really, really where it came to a head for me. I said, I would love to be involved with this stuff. I don't know where the Learning Village is. Oh, it's next to the container park. Oh, okay. The container park is at least on a map. So familiar locations, familiar places, and relative times are difficult for the uninitiated to parse, and you end up costing them time and effort, and they may just give up, and it may cost you business and fans and followers. So we all have, not all, I know, not everybody, I don't mean to be presumptive. A lot of people have mobile devices in our pockets which can use calendars, maps, messaging, the legacy of established protocols like CalDave, which is used for calendar servers. If you've ever used, if you've ever used Google calendars, Yahoo calendars, Outlook calendars, the list goes on. They all use CalDave, so they can interoperate. iCalendar streams, an Apple invention. If you've ever received an email with an event attached to it, maybe it said maybe if you heard that, car driving by. If you receive an email, it has maybe something like basic.ics or event.ics. That's an iCalendar stream file. And nowadays, many email clients that have a calendar integration will see that attachment and say, oh, I'll go ahead and put that on your calendar so you can at least see it. And then you can accept or decline this invitation, this event invitation. You can also use that to tell people when things are happening, whether they need to or want to RSVP. You can at least, for example, hey, your domain name registration is coming up, or your hair appointment, or your nails appointment, or your vehicle registration expert. You can receive these email notifications if they included a calendar, a V event, a V calendar, V event object in iCalendar stream format. 95% chance that whatever the recipient of that reminder is using will be able to say, oh, well, let me stick this on your calendar so you remember. You can also, there are a few objects in the vCalendar hierarchy. That's for another episode of another time. So these are requests for comments. These are generally accepted specifications that are in use today with plenty of extensions, but they're used by everybody. Calendars work. ISO 6709, concerning the standard representation of longitude, latitude, and altitude. You can send someone a precise location. Be here, exactly, at this point on the planet. Here is a precise time. I'll give it to you in UTC, and your map can configure itself to display in the local time zone if you want, or however you want to consume it. So instead of saying tomorrow, I'm going to say be here at let's pick 2000 UTC at this latitude, longitude, latitude, although Google and others use latitude and longitude. You can convert that time based on the latitude and longitude to the local time. If you are in a different time zone and you need to travel by plane, you can know what time it will be where you are. You can adjust it to the destination time zone if you want. So you'll always be precise with a UTC time that doesn't vary with time zone. It doesn't vary with daylight savings or normal, quote unquote, normal time. So you can be very precise, and all of these resources are available almost universally at this point. And we all have the internet or some access to it somewhere. And certainly when I say all, just to keep it simple, if you're listening to this, you have access to the internet, and you probably have a mobile device. You probably use Google Maps. You probably have used a calendar at some point. So these are not new concepts. We really never need to tell someone information we are not certain of. We need not share that information without specific useful location and time references. It's that simple. So if you don't know exactly where you're meeting, you should find out. If you don't know that your time zone is wrong and people tell you, you should take action and fix it. You should be very clear with people. If you're off by an hour, if you're off by AM versus PM, so 12 hours, if you're off by 23 hours because you got the time zone way off, if you're off by the day because of the international dateline, these are all easily solvable if you take a moment and understand not even the intricacies of the CalDave standard or ISO 6709, but if you simply make use of the tools and account for the time zone difference. In Google Calendar, for example, you indicate your time zone. You just select it explicitly, and the rest of the work can happen pretty much automatically behind the scenes. If you specify the incorrect time zone, things won't work. So whatever platform, this podcast meetup, whatever, however they set that up, I would hope that platform understands time zones, even if the organizers of the event may not have noticed it, may have been thinking in their minds like a NASA scientist. Oh yes, 8 p.m. That sounds like the right time here, because I know it will be 7 p.m. in Nevada. But if you publish the 8 p.m. time and it shows up as 8 p.m. in Nevada, then people in Nevada will think, wait a minute, is it 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock? And then your orbiter crashes. So what can we do? How do we fix this? That is, after all, the point of this entire audio program, FFS. What works, what doesn't, what can we do about it? So what works is the fact that we have these tools, we have these standards. We can daily, and we didn't get into the intricacies of food preparation, of medical, well, that's beyond the scope of this, but medical considerations when it comes to medications, when it comes to measuring your temperature. Like, if you said my temperature is 38 degrees, I'd be like, man, I hope that's Celsius. So we often will make some simplifying assumptions there. If your temperature is above 95, it's probably Fahrenheit, hopefully. So sometimes we make these assumptions, but that's not a good habit. So what can we do about it? Well, be accurate and be precise. We have the tools, we have the methods, we have the wherewithal. We need to value the effort that goes into paying attention to these things. And unfortunately, as is so often the case, when you get it right, nobody notices. If the organizers of this meetup I mentioned, if they had said 7 p.m. in the sort of description, and if the event was marked as 7 p.m. Pacific time, no one would have thought about it. No one would have commented like, oh, hey, congratulations, you got the time zone right. Nobody would do that. So you will find out about it, though, when you are in error. So then you should take action. And so try to be accurate, try to be precise, and take any error messages, any notifications, anyone pointing out that, hey, you got the time zone wrong, or hey, did you mean East or West 10th Street? Or, did you mean Suite 4 or Suite 8? The list goes on. Did you mean a fluid, 10 fluid ounces? Or, how are you measuring these ingredients? So there's always a room to be aware when you need to be precise and accurate, right? You need to pick the right units. You need to be like, is that sifted flour? That'll be a different amount of flour if it's sifted versus not sifted. Do I level it, or do I just go with a scoop? Do I eyeball it? So cooking has a wide margin of error. Luckily, most cooking is tolerant of errors. It has a wide tolerance band around each measurement. But if you put in 40 milliliters of olive oil versus 40 ounces, that's a very different recipe. So there's a huge amount of variation in everything we do every day, and only by sort of convention and by what we could call common sense, if it is, do we manage to make our way through without. I got on a plane one time and they overfilled the aircraft with fuel. I mentioned the Gimli glider earlier, but I was on an aircraft and I overheard one of the crew, or one of the ground crew, I think, mentioning that they just read a number wrong on units. And so they overfueled it, and so they had to remove fuel. We could all smell the kerosene. It's like, woo, that is it's quite the odor. And if you overfuel a plane, they have to dump the fuel because you can't land an aircraft that's overweight. You can't land it safely. You can, but it's not as safe. So you cannot overfuel your aircraft, but that means you also have to know the distance you're traveling, the cargo load, your takeoff weight, and so on. So all these numbers have to line up, and that's, once again, how you can be impacted by not paying attention, people somewhere not paying attention to accuracy and precision. So use calendars, use calendar tools, use your mobile devices, use your desktop computers, use a pen and paper if you want. Use calendars with correct location information. We all have access to, and again, all of us listening to this certainly have access to Google Maps, Apple Maps, MapQuest, OpenStreetMaps, the list goes on. Use the location information in your calendar so people know where they're going when they need to get there. If you're going to have an appointment, if you're going to have a meetup, any kind of an event, you can be accurate and precise in when and where. You can even tell people why. Let the tools do their work. If you need to change or cancel your event, if you need to move the venue, if you need to send an update about, hey, if you're coming to this event, make sure you wear a coat because it's going to be cold outside and we're on the patio, whatever it is. If you've associated an action taken by your guests, they will be traveling to and attending your meetup. The tools exist. They work really well. If you put in the right information, they work. And be pedantic. Those not using the tools and methods, but have them at their disposal, they should value your time, and they should make use of these tools to demonstrate that. If somebody sends you a text message, says, "Hey, come to this thing next week," and you don't show up, yeah, I forgot the text message. If somebody sends you a calendar invitation and you accept it, now you have in your pocket a reminder. You can later decline it. Hey, I can't make it because of this. But the proaction has been taken. The steps are there. You can see them. Someone sent you a thing that really is useful. We all have these calendars in our pockets, right? Like here's the date, the time, the place. You don't even need to look it up. You click on this link if you want to see the location. You can put it right into Uber, Lyft, figure out where the bus goes. The more of these things that are integrated, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but the internet has all of these things already spelled out. The way to integrate things, the way to call services, to connect them through request response. You could literally, if we software people do our jobs, you should literally be able to say, I want to go to this meetup. Here's a calendar invite. I've accepted it. I'm going to click on the location information or touch it with my finger or however you do these things. You should have an opportunity to get directions to that location, which is built into Google Maps. I don't know if I'm going to assume it is in Apple Maps and maybe others. I want to find out which bus I need to take or which airlines offer flights between my city and that city, etc. And Google's been doing this. They've been integrating more of these things. For better or worse, you do have to sign away your soul to tell them exactly where it's going to be when you're dead to make use of these things. They're sharing all that for money. But the bottom line is they have done some very interesting things in this area. It's worth taking a look at what's available and then making use of those things. And you will be demonstrating to the people that want to attend your event that you value their time and they can value your efforts when they show up or tell you when they won't. That's all I have to say. Be precise, be accurate, at least put in the effort, make use of the tools. We are surrounded by them. The tools work. Get used to encouraging others to use them. And you can be gentle, but if someone says, hey, the meeting is at 7, and you see on the calendar, the event site, the awful website, meetup.com, for example, hey, it says 8 o'clock there. You should be diligent and say, you have it set at 8. That is going to confuse people. They will arrive late. Be consistent, use the tools, be aware, accept feedback, make corrections, make sure accuracy and precision rule the day. And people will spend less time curious about the details and more time curious about the meetup. That's all I have to say. Don't forget, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. Keep track of this and other episodes and audio programs and where you'll be able to find them in addition to the current places. We do want to add video to this and the other programs. There's more stuff coming. I can be neither accurate nor precise about the scope and grandeur of these plans. Big, but vague they are today. So I'll leave you there. 5:03 p.m. on this April 17th, 2024. A fine time to end.